Hey everybody, it's the Last Robokai here, and it's time for episode 3 of Let's Play Dawn of War Dark Crusade. The last time, we removed Chaos from the game completely. Aside from the few territories that they may or may not have held, that we will take over in short order, they are gone for good. Eliphas the Inheritor will not be moving around the map and bothering us, and he will not be returning until Dawn of War 2 Chaos Rising. So we've got our eyes set on a few other things, and we'll be taking some special territory, and at the very end of this particular episode, we'll be taking part in one of the battles that's not quite a skirmish battle. So, joining me on this little adventure in just skirmish crushing everybody.
Ahoy, ahoy, as usual.
That's cool, guy. And we're, we'll probably just be spending the entirety of this episode just lore chatting, because there are a few things I'd like to, correct, as we get into it as well, from what I said, the last stream. The last episode.
Us being wrong on individual points of lore in Warhammer is totally normal.
I tell everybody I'm allowed to be wrong. It's my thing. I'm wrong at least once every single time on something. In this particular case, I guarantee you it will come up multiple times in the comment section, in the thread. People will be parking outside my house with a megaphone yelling at me about this one.
Stop being wrong, and then you're just going to turn around. Show yourself, coward. I will never stop being wrong.
I'll never stop. So with that in mind, let's get stuck straight in. So we're actually going to be starting this one with a defensive mission, which gives you kind of a good idea of how spicy the game can get, because we'll be going up against a full power enemy.
I was going to
AI.
say strength 12. I think is about as tough as they get.
Yeah. Well, the good news is, in Dark Crusade at least, you get to keep all the buildings you put down within a certain radius. If you go beyond that radius, the game you can't quite literally put your own buildings inside of the enemy's camp. In a certain radius they will just demolish everything. But I build right to the fringe of that, so I can immediately get going. I've got my full economy ready to rumble. So we're not in quite a bad condition. It is worth noting, however, we are not using my usual Necron Lord. The Necron Lord we get is basically the one, just like the usual one you get in Dark Crusade games, in multiplayer and skirmishes. In that he starts deactivated, you purchase him and he stands up, and so he's like the spiders in effect. If he falls, that's where he lands. The difference is, of course, is that unlike the tomb spiders, he can teleport out of there. Things get spicy.
Yeah, I remember when I played my Space Marine campaign. You could just spam the crap out of strongholds in the middle of the arena. So you would start these missions with 5 different strongholds and just an absolute sicko amount of requisition. So it didn't really matter if somebody attacked you with 3 bases. You would have 4 armies within 60 seconds or so. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so normally a defensive action might be tricky, but I actually set this place up the way I did because I had time and room, and the enemy AI was so low, specifically for this reason, because I'm a genius. And they're starting to want to come in. They're starting to want to attack me already. As you can see some from the red blob there. But luckily for me,
oh look. It's a restored monolith.
Luckily for me, and unluckily for them, so this should be over fairly quickly. It can be a lot worse if you don't have all of those setups.
And usually these defensive actions also work on annihilate rules as well. So if you have some way to deep strike right next to a field headquarters like that and just ace the HQ, you can definitely expect that a good third of the enemy force, or just the entire enemy force, will simply disappear. It's over. It's done.
So I did want to clarify what I was talking about in the intro when I talked about some lore that some people will come in and correct on me. I actually pulled out my Necron Codex, the one that sort of changed things up, the 2011 print. I can't even remember what rule set that was by this point. I don't know what edition of rules it was. But I did say the Silent King came later, but in actuality the Silent King is mentioned in the books here. So the Silent King is not nearly as out of left field as it seemed at the time. And I also said that Silent King was totes in charge, but it's kind of a little bit different. There's actually, they had this thing called the Triarch, and the way it worked is that like the Pharaons, which are like, you know, the leaders, there were like 3 who would make up the supreme leaders, and there was the Silent King who would never actually speak to anybody, and then 2 others who would act as his voice, and also manage things, and so that together they were the Triarch. It is worth noting that the Triarch effectively ceased to exist after the rebellion against the Catan, as everyone except the Silent King was wiped out of the 3. So, you know, like, I'm a little bit right, I'm a little bit wrong. But I didn't want to clarify that, because I know a few people would be like, you stupid fool, you fuck, you have already stumbled on the first step to telling us all about the Necrons.
Lore.
And it's going to be real funny, because, like, I haven't uploaded the second episode yet, where we're actually talk about that, and I'm just like I said in the intro, fully expecting a lot of stuff.
Bracing ourselves for the comments. It's fine. It's fine. Please let that be the biggest mistake we make this Let's Play. Like every day I see people screwing up their lives, and we're screwing up Warhammer lore. I'm very content with my choices in life.
At least you know we're not like those videos on YouTube where a dude has like Wikipedia up and he just reads from it like while like sort of panning over like shots of like lore, like
dude,
like
Wikipedia
like,
is
shots of art,
wrong
stuff like
just
that.
as often as we are. Like, Lexiconum is a generally reliable source, but that's because all of the people who are showing up and saying no, you're actually wrong about this are Lexiconum editors. I've got all of you scouted. I'm inside your house.
He's watching you. So so in that regard, like that sort of lays it out for you. But the general bullet points I was on were pretty good. Like the Necron tier were starting to fracture. So when the old ones turned up, they were like, hooray. The war against the old ones wasn't going so well, however, because the old ones were they were technologically superior, and well, actually, now apparently, the Necron tier might have had better technology, actually, but the problem was that the old ones had the webway, and the webway was very good at allowing the old ones to just sort of, you know, avoid them, and then hit them, and then hurt them. Which of course frustrated everyone, and they were like, the Triarch are a bunch of idiots, yada yada yada. And then they found the Catan, and yeah.
The rest is history.
Yeah. And it was the Deceiver who actually came up with the plan to put everybody in the Necrodermis bodies, to digitize the Necron race so they might feast on their souls, and unfortunately for them, they went along with it. Thanks, thanks, Joe. And but it wasn't actually. They weren't the ones that like developed the technology. That was a different character. That was what was his name? God, where is he? I'm actually just pulling the book out now. It's hold on, I'm finding him. Yeah, a Luminor Zerus, who is an interesting character who only, like, in the last few years got a model. That's a hell of a model. And he's an interesting character to talk about as well.
Yeah, I remember that being almost he's slightly like a Cypher character insofar as he's always had a very disproportionate effect on the universe, and specifically the Necrons, of course. But very few people talk about him in any serious way. I think there was also a similar situation where Cypher himself didn't even have a model for a number of years before suddenly he did, and he had his Chow Yun Fat dual pistol set up that kind of became his trademark.
His look, yeah.
Yeah, and for the longest time, it was just sort of like, okay, well, there's this really, really mysterious dude who's doing all of these mysterious things that definitely has affected it at one point he something he did redirected most of a Chaos Warband. It's just like, okay, well, that's uncommon. but didn't have much explanation. I guess the Necrons were in that sort of limbo for a long time as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, Zerus is kind of fun, because, like we said, he's the guy who basically developed the tech to digitize everything. We won, and because we won a defense, we get more war gear. So it's actually, you do want to get attacked. And if we want to, I don't think I actually chose the... Did I not choose the thing then? I don't think I did.
It looked like you chose the death mask, but I went down.
I feel like I didn't choose it all, and I just forgot. But we'll find out.
Murder too. Okay, cool.
Yeah, murder.
I'm a big fan of your naming conventions here.
You know, we just got to keep on murdering. This is an interesting piece of lore here, actually, and ends up tying into stuff that that happens in Dawn of War 2 Chaos Rising, in that they punch through, and like they're punching through the jungles of Blood Ravens, and they find the they find the remains of some battle brothers, and they take their gene seed and stuff, and they're like, the thing is, this guy who I've just harvested here, I looked in the records for this name, and this person has already died, so why is this person here now, having died here? And so, like, we remember in Chaos Rising, the books have been cooked a fair amount in terms of who is alive and who is dead, and you know, we mess around in that, and you know, and discover that a lot of it might be tied to when Kyrus was trapped aboard a space hulk when a Great Unclean One was messing everything up. It's kind of clever. That's like they drew on a lot of stuff in the Dawn of War games, especially Dawn of War 2. Drew on a lot of stuff from the previous games, even like a little bit of lore like that actually held like a very significant amount of relevance. And now we've got the defense out of the way, we could actually move on to wiping another little bit of chaos territory off the board. Another 1 difficulty region, so this should be quick.
Yeah, this isn't going to take long at all. Probably just march right over with your honor guard and call it a day.
Yeah, like, so I was going to just say, like, Zerus is like one of those characters like that. He's quite happy with the whole digitization thing, because now he doesn't have to sleep or eat or anything, and he can continue on his personal journey, because making the Necrons functionally immortal was not his end game. He actually wants to turn like himself and the rest of his race into basically beings composed entirely of light, which is because he believes that's the next step towards godhood.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
That particular trope shows up a lot in a lot of sci-fi, and one particular question regarding that trope that's never quite answered is a very simple one. Why? Why do you think that? Why precisely do you think that that is a thing? And everybody is always just like, don't worry about it. It is what it is. Like, okay, fine, whatever. We're doing this now.
Yeah, they do admit that, like, even he's like, because I've just opened up the book here, it basically just says, like, he's probably never going to figure it out, because, like, he doesn't understand the concept of the soul. He will never be able to research it. Like, he'll never be able to find it. And, you know, like, and so his goal will be forever out of reach, but because he's, you know, he's driven to do it, he will just continue to do it. And he's augmented himself quite significantly. Even in like the original picture for him, he entirely replaced his legs with like these big, like scything, like spider legs instead. Like instead of like 2 eyes, he has just like 1 big, deep gazing eye. And in his later model, he's also got like really like elaborate winding tentacles. He likes to collect living experiments to experiment on, and like, you know, like turns his ears off when they start screaming too loud because it gets in the way of trying to get things done.
That's the sort of adorable little detail that I treasure.
Yeah. So that's Zerus. He like I said, he only really got more of a role later on in the later games. Like, sorry, in the later editions and stuff like that. I think it's like a campaign where a bunch of Sisters of Battle and like Space Marines and stuff just go on like this crusade into like a particularly troubled region and discover, oh, this Psycho Necron apparently is like doing big harvest and like trying to like basically just like cut up as many people as he can to try and figure out more stuff.
Figuring out the soul by dissecting frogs. Cool. Sure.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, he
Look at
also
that.
does figure out like a few other things from like different like he gets from like cutting up people or cutting up like different flora and fauna. He also figures out ways that it might be implemented as a technology. You know, like, oh hey, this particular species of creature has really really strong carapace armor. And so he looks at how, he pulls it apart and basically just sees what the inner workings are, how it's contoured, how that works against certain weaponry, and then sees if he can adapt that sort of a design to Necron tech. So like he might be the only reason like Necrons even advance at all, technologically speaking, beyond their ascendants, their digital ascendants that they've completed.
Well, I mean, certainly, but he's also one of the like at least in that particular incarnation of the Necrons, he's one of only like a couple hundred that's even truly sentient. Like remember this to recast this in context for people listening. I believe, and Robokai, correct me if I'm wrong. You're still basically talking about Old Kron universe, right?
No, he's...
Oh, this is Necron?
He's a Necron. He was a special character.
Oh, interesting, okay.
Yeah, because you remember, like, when the Necrons first came out, they did not have special characters. They had the Deceiver and they had the Nightbringer. And that was it. Like, the Stormlord was a concept that had its own model, but I don't really think it had much in the way of its own rules or anything. It might have, I'm happy to be wrong on that. The Stormlord is actually still a character too, but they gave him like a full name and like full identity. Is like, I'm just gonna flick over to it. He's actually, yeah, Imhotep the Stormlord, the Pharaoh of the Sortek dynasty is what they call him. And so he's still got like a few of the usual things, but he's basically like an extremely he's got a bit of a he's got a bit of the case of the oh god, I'm actually forgetting his name. The Warhammer Fantasy Mega Pharaoh.
Yeah, Cetra.
Cetra, yeah, I was mind blanking him on that. He's basically got that sort of a background to him in no small part because like the story of him being like brought up was is the same, because like basically like when the Sortek dynasty started awakening, there was like a civil war because the Sortek themselves were largely untouched by Eldar or trouble or anything, so they were still pretty good, and everyone was like fighting one another, but they were trying not to wake up anybody else. And then one guy was like, "Oh, but like, why don't I wake up this great general, and have him help out?" And so he did, and Imhotep immediately took over because he realized the only way that this was going to work was to basically just kick everyone's ass. And so yeah, he basically just did his own thing. And as a result, he's got this entire largely untouched dynasty at his disposal. Most people can't even like hope to fight him. His one big thing is that he can't help himself. If he fights somebody, like an enemy army general, he tends to let them go, but he likes to take their hand. Which is really kind of funny in its own way. Like, that's like, even he's not immune to the mental quirk problems of the Necrons, even as he's like an amazing strategist. He also really hates the Orcs because he absolutely cannot figure out their battle strategies. He can figure everybody else out. The Orcs always blindside him because he just doesn't understand what the fuck they're trying to do. Because
they're not trying to do much of anything, and that's the point.
Yeah. And yeah, so he's the Stormlord now. Imhotep the Stormlord, and it does it does segue into like the thing I did want to talk about in this thing. But you were going to say something before I started.
No. Like I basically it was good you corrected me, because I was understanding that this in the entirely wrong context. Like one a Necron scientist or whatever is really interesting, but like there's not that many Necrons who are truly whole and hale enough to even contemplate how can things be better, rather than just how can I keep doing the things that I'm good at? It's one of the most common things that comes into effect when you start talking about people who are particularly long-lived. And there's some cool thinking regarding that, but that is an incredibly off-topic cool guy rant, and I'm not even sure how I could bring that particular, like, I frequently run off with the point, but I always bring it back, and I'm not sure how I can bring that particular rant back, so I'll just shut the hell up.
That's fair enough. But I was sort of hoping us to get into like where the Necrons have sort of from the original incarnation to the book I've got here, the little bits of changes that they made, and an adaptation of the idea of the Necrons with personality, but also the degradation of the mind, the degradation of the personality, the faults of digitization, because obviously, physically speaking, Necrons, their bodies are very easy to repair because of the necrodermis, and also the scarabs and everything like that. So deterioration physically is like unless they like all the systems fail, in which case it doesn't really matter, they're all dead anyway. So like a single like activated one physically is unassailable. Spiritually, they don't have a soul anymore, so it's not like you can like rip their soul out and eat it. So in that regard, they're also impervious. You can't like use soul sense to find a Necron, that sort of thing. And you can't even like read their mind, because their mind is not like a human mind. It is not connected to a human soul or an alien soul or a soul in general. So it just comes down to the mind, and so that's where like I think it's probably best to like tick into like the destroyers and the flayed ones, because they are an example of major errors in Necron society,
right?
as it exists now. To call them errors is kind of interesting, because one appears to be a natural course of immortality and conflict, and the other is a digital virus, seemingly introduced by one particular Catan. So we'll talk about the destroyers first. They call it like I don't know. Let me just check the book here. I'm just gonna check the book, because they
probably worth doing just to make sure that we get the terminology right. Because you know damn well that if we get the terminology wrong, it's gonna overlap with some other term that has nothing to do with what we're actually trying to talk about. It will actually be a thing. It just won't be the thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't want to cause confusion. But the destroyers are. I'm still not actually finding it. Where's the actual entry for the destroyers? I'm gonna go straight to that, because that will tell me exactly what I need to know. It's going past all these really weird and wonderful entries.
The thing
I remember
the general gist of what you're talking about, insofar as like I remember that the destroyers basically have a very specific kind of fixation, and that fixation was something that was basically intentional, because it was one particular general's experience that when they ran into people who were also highly mechanized, their very samey forces were struggling a lot, so basically to make sure that the Necrons tasked with being the designated monsters, for lack of a better term, because like the destroyer body is recognizably monstrous to the digitization program. That like to make sure that they stayed stable because of that. Like they just had a they deployed what amounted to a virus to change the psychological profile of constructs that were designated to be destroyers. Like this is what I'm half remembering from when I read a lot of this stuff like half a decade ago. So I'm certain I'm wrong in any of the
Yeah, I'm not finding anything about that. The Necron destroyers, by all accounts of everything I'm reading, it's a particular form of madness that strikes the Necrons, where essentially the distinction of life the idea that they are still living creatures has completely slipped from the Necron Destroyer concept. And they become obsessed with expunging all life, and it's kind of interesting in that apparently no one can sort of really tell them what to do. They just go and do what they want, and so like the best battle plan is the one which you take into account the destroyers are going to probably surge in and try and do the most damage to like the living as they possibly can, and just sort of work around it rather than try and force them to do anything about it. And so yeah, like. They tend to come from those who have more freedom of thought, because it typically follows that feeling of ennui, of like that eternity of living, of life, and things like that. And so when they sort of essentially shut off that they essentially shut off those sorts of emotions as they go into destroyer mode. They also lose the concept of their form, and they're more willing to augment themselves, and things like that.
I think that's the part where I'm getting where I was like coming up with that, functionally getting confused.
Yeah, they've basically moved beyond the time of flesh, as it's so amusingly called. Yeah, see, I didn't actually equip it. I was just like,
didn't actually equip the dude mask. All right, fine.
Okay, we're doing it now though. There we go.
Whatever.
It's a nice mask. Gotta.
So stupid.
You can. Yeah, I think you can. If you click on the head of a defeated general, I'm pretty sure you can actually replay the. And so the Necrons, the next area that we're going to be taking on is a special area, but doesn't have a special scenario. I'm pretty sure it's still a skirmish map, and the thing about that is that they if by taking it, we get a bonus to a lot of our caps at the start. So what that means is you can build up a larger rudimentary force faster as well. It's very useful. We're gonna take a look at it once this turn ends, hopefully.
We must withdraw.
So and I believe it does allow you to go beyond the initial cap as well. Like, so the 2020 cap that you would normally have, I think, if you grab enough of these places. Because I think there's more than one. You end up quite swole. So we'll take a look here.
Speaking of swole, like that is what a lot of these other your opponents are not right now. Like, it's incredible to me exactly how many of these random attacks are failing.
Yeah, they're all just bouncing off. I was like, okay, if you guys won't be bad at war, I'm okay with this.
I am really stunned about that. Increased manpower.
Yeah, so like I moused over it very briefly, but it increases your caps. I'm still thinking about that. I'm thinking, should I go this way and go get the spaceport? And then I thought about it. I was like, what I want is I want to go get that Imperial Guard position that gives you 2 attack moves per turn, because that's way better. And then when you get the spaceport, then you can just beam yourself across the planet every single time twice as fast.
The spaceport is one of those things that unless you start with it, it's not as good as you would think. Just because if you don't start with it, you have to cut your way halfway across the planet to get there, and then once you've arrived there, you've definitely got options in all directions anyway. So it's like by the time you get the access, you no longer need the access.
It is definitely positioned that way. Yeah. So we're off to the Assyria Forests, where apparently everyone was doing experimentation, or at least like someone was doing experimentation and analysis on the local flora and fauna. I don't know. And now and it's not a very large map, so this should go pretty quickly. So the maps are like different sized, depending, because they're all available in multiplayer, which was kind of nice actually. The sheer amount of multiplayer maps we got from Dark Crusade, was phenomenal.
This was definitely one of the biggest things that, like, I never really liked this particular campaign style as much as the campaign maps. But I definitely did appreciate this campaign style even back, freaking 15, 20 years ago when this came out, because I recognized it was really obvious when you're playing the game the first time that all of these are skirmish maps, so they were able to double up on effort. And it was just like, okay, well, like for the 10 hours that like generously that I might refine and mess with a campaign. You know, I was easily going to play 50 hours of skirmish with my buddies.
There's so many more options. That's not to say I don't love Biffy's Peril, but it is always nice to have more options in general.
Yeah, everybody loves Bloodshed Alley as well. Like, it's a great map, but you know, like when you're playing with the boys, and you know it's 3 hours in, you can only play like 1 hour of Bloodshed Alley before you're ready to move on.
Yeah. So the other and so we've talked about the destroyers, and so because of that, destroyer lords are still a thing, and the destroyer lords are like, they're essentially, like, I guess the destroyers are the closest thing to it you get to, like, Skynet. Just being like, well, life's gotta go, so I'm gonna kill life. And, like, so while most of the other ones are all like, oh yeah, you know, most of, like, the destroyers are just like, yeah, I'm just gonna kill these guys in ranged combat, whatever. Kill all life. The destroyer lords are like, nah, man, I gotta do this up nice and close. I gotta, they're basically sentient enough to extract a modicum of what you might call joy from genocide, which is, you know, a sentence. And they did get off lightly.
That's the Necrons.
But this just seems to be a sort of mental quirk as a result of immortality. So, like, hey kids, don't be immortal and a robot, or you will probably try to kill everybody. Joke's on you though, because they will all be dead of old age, and you won't recognize anyone you're killing.
You got everything you wanted for. Was it worth it?
That's the Silent King says no. The Silent King is basically like, no, we shouldn't have done this. This was a bad idea. Oops. So now like, so that was the one that came up from the mental like one of the forms of mental degradation within the Necrons themselves. That wasn't seeded by anybody. That just sort of, you know, happened as a byproduct. So then we've got the Flayed ones, and the Flayed ones are actually, somewhat amusingly, a result of external influence. It's basically referred to as a curse by the Catan. But considering they're like digital, I would say it's probably more like a weird virus. The Catan could mess with reality in indescribable ways. They could essentially cause space to fold in on itself and crush a tank into a cube in like a second. Like the sheer amount of power that they had over reality and perception of reality and functions of reality could not be understated. They were horrific monsters, and the idea that they could one day become whole again is like terrifying. So, or at least to the Necrons, everybody like and the Eldar. I don't think the Imperium really quite understands. They're like, yeah, okay, cool dude. Like, cool story, man. But the Flayed ones, interestingly enough, are they were apparently the result of the only Catan that was destroyed completely. So the Catan, and I'm like, this was like one of the first instances, I think, of like something outside of the big four I mentioned previously. Like I mentioned the outside, the Nightbringer, the Deceiver, and the Void Dragon. Well, then there was this fellow named Landugor, the Flayer, which is where the Flayed ones comes from, because I guess he flayed their minds.
You have conquered the Assyria Forests and gained the increased manpower special ability. When you fight on the battle map, you will start with an increased squad cap and vehicle cap, allowing you to field a larger force.
Which is always handy. So apparently he was like, well, fuck you guys, I don't know why the rest of them didn't curse everybody else before they got, like, fragmented, but whatever. But apparently he was just like, he basically reached out and put it in, and so, for whatever reason, these particular Necrons start to hunger for flesh. And originally they would drape themselves, like in the old Cron lore, they were like draping themselves in bits of skin and stuff, almost act as like shock troops, like to scare the enemy. And also, or also possibly as a quirk, as where they were trying to wear the skin in order to manifest as like, you know, like the shock of losing their bodies, or losing, like, you know, trying to store flesh onto themselves. But now the Flayed ones are like, they're actually trying to eat, which they don't have mouths, they don't have internal organ systems, but they still try to eat flesh. And in addition to this, their bodies have altered. Like their necrodermis, along with this new programming imperative, sends them on the path of like growing much longer claws and things like that. And rather than just clawing their way out of the ground like they did previously, now they have this weird quirk where, unlike other Necrons, they seem to be more willfully capable of just teleporting themselves onto a battle where the Necrons already are, like, and then teleporting away to somewhere else. They're like, a Necron Flayed one does not teleport back into the crypt when damaged. It goes somewhere else to repair. Somewhere else being like a city. That is, I'm going to have to flick around and look up here. See, some people use Wikipedia's. I just literally open a codex and read it.
Heresy that the influence of chaos first drove Space Marine against Space Marine. Cronus witnessed some of this terrible fighting, and the heretics of those ancient times left behind them terrible artifacts. In the desolate Ares Badlands stood one such talisman. An ancient icon of the blood god Khorne. With war sweeping Cronus once more, a demon within the icon awoke. It fed on the souls of those slain in combat, and promised gifts to whoever would slake its thirst for blood. Even the warriors of the Imperium ended up feeding the fiend as they fought across the Badlands to prevent others from claiming this prize. The faithful tried to ignore the whispers the demons slipped into their minds, but every death still fed its dark appetite. In the end, whoever controlled the Ares Badlands would gain a measure of the demons' fury, allowing them to launch attack after attack against their enemies.
If you recognize that what's the word I'm looking for? Plot device. That's because you watched our the Dawn of War 1 original Let's Play we did, because that's literally exactly what the demon inside of the MacGuffin there did.
Yeah, so we're in a race now to destroy more enemy units than they destroy of us, and we're up against the Imperial Guard. So they're like, I don't know if the number is scaled depending on who you fight, but against the Imperial Guard it is easy to pile up a lot of bodies. But apparently this Drazak place is just like it's just full of like things that like eating flesh. And apparently there's like an entire like Necron kingdom there where everyone except the guy in charge are like Flayed ones, or like and essentially everyone just takes their meat back there. And they spend their time running around, like, pretending to eat, like, meat and stuff until it, like, they've either, like, the meat's all been cut up so small they can't try and scoop it up into their faces again. The blood can no longer be swirled around, or it's all rotted, in which case, like, they go out hunting again. So it's kind of fucked up.
It would be adorable if it weren't so horrifying.
Yeah, and you do encounter, a pocket tomb, like a particular tomb in the Mechanicus turn-based game, which is completely given over to the Flayed, to being Flayed, the Flayed virus. I don't even think they just call it the curse of the Flayer. So the curse of the Flayer has made everyone spicy crazy there, and it is not a fun place to fight in. It's kind of spooky, yo. There's a lot of meat everywhere, and everything's kind of rotted and nasty and orange. It's not very green. There's a lot of orange to it.
If I remember correctly, even the Mechanicus people that are acting as the talking heads, like the commanders, even the most mechanical of them are just like, yeah, this is fucked up.
Mm-hmm. They could recognize something had gone very, very wrong. And this dives into the last of the. Because there are no like special, at least in this book, there are no special characters that have the Destroyer virus or the Flayed One virus. At least not in this book. If another one's appeared, I haven't seen it yet. But there is one who has a horrible case of senility, who I wanted to talk about because he's kind of fun too. And that's That's Nemesaur Zandrank. In his particular case, for whatever reason, either like they're not entirely sure if it's genuine or if he's just putting on a bit, which honestly would be the funniest thing I've ever seen. Zandrank believes that he is still in the height of these, like, the time when they were all alive and fleshy. So he doesn't see, when he looks at all the other Necrons around, he sees them as they were, or as his mind would imagine they were. He still treats he still treats everything as being kind of like the cloak and dagger politics. He treats his enemies, regardless of who they are, with like honor and stuff like that. So even to the point that like I think he only sees like other like Space Marines and Eldar and Orcs and stuff like that as just different Necron dynasty people as well. So I'm not sure like how deep this man's like general like mind cracking goes, but he definitely hasn't he definitely hasn't had a good time. But by that same token, and the fact that he also comes from a pretty small dynasty that's like it's been basically absorbed by Imhotep, he's still a really good general, and I think he's actually better at dealing with the orcs than than Imhotep is. And it's kind of funny because he will often take like prisoners and things like that, and then he'll like throw them banquets and stuff like that. With food for them to eat and things like that, while he himself like tries to drink wine and it just sort of hits his chin. And
everybody just looks at him really friggin' strange the entire time.
And of course, like he has a bodyguard who has all of his faculties, known as Varguard Oberon, and Oberon is basically he basically keeps the Nemesaur from getting shit bobbed. But also cleans up the messes that this like that this whole like taking prisoners thing does. He tends to like to quietly off them, and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my lord. They perished whilst trying to escape, attacking our guards." And Zandrank will always like, "Oh, what a shame, and go on his way. and Oberon is like programmed for absolute loyalty, so he's never gonna betray him. As much as any other of the Necron lords amongst this like small dynasty are like, man, this dude's gotta go. I don't care how great he is. He's like making us look stupid, but they can't do anything about it because Oberon will basically just like murderize the shit out of them.
Right, and remember the undercurrent of what Robokai mentioned earlier is that as much as he's treating all of his enemies with honor, he still sees internally all of the backstabbing political games that he was used to back when everybody was pre-digitization. I almost said everybody was whole, but that's kind of a loaded term when you're talking about the Necrons, because what precisely is whole when you're talking about Necrons? That is a very interesting philosophical discussion.
Yeah, so I kind of like that as a discussion because it's definitely the best way to have given them personality. I think is to acknowledge that that one of the biggest problems that they face is just the deterioration of time on their mental faculties more than anything. Like we've got 2 examples out of 3. Where time is the one that develops, whereas the curse seems to develop over time as well. You might not notice a Necron warrior who's been infected by this because, they might just ignore orders sometimes to like stop and like cut up someone and take a piece of meat with them, and you might not be aware of that. You might be like as a Necron Lord, you might be like, unit like 4,327 is like 5 seconds slow in responding to orders. Well, that's with indeterminate, determinate things. He might have just been having like a conflict. Like let's let him keep going, and then like a few years later, oh, he's vanished completely. Oh, okay, maybe that was a Flayed one thing. Maybe it's like he's grown claws and teleported. All right.
This is in fact one of the things that, since you mentioned Skynet earlier, I had a particular a particular point about this. I believe it was on one of our random streams, but it's relevant here, so I'll bring the point back up. Is that one of the difficulties with AI and artificial general intelligence, AGI in general, is this is distinct from the uploads that Necrons basically are. Is that when you're attempting to make the dynasty, or the AI dynasty that becomes the AI apocalypse that everybody fears, the AI runs into much the same problem that their human creators did or would when giving birth to the AGI. How do you keep these sub processes like still working with you as you continue to go forward? Otherwise, even something as simple as the speed of light delay when communicating will inherently make it difficult to trust any of these sub processes that you have, because they don't necessarily share your goals after a certain number of
the blood god shall be yours.
All right, Sparky, chill out.
Power that definitely cannot be used by us, but we'll take anyway.
Yeah, whatever, man. Like you really need to calm down, like remembering who the hell you're working with here. Anyway, but this perfectly well explains.
You have conquered Era's Badlands
Thank you.
And gained the Fury special ability. Fury gives you 2 full moves per turn instead of just 1. Just like before, you can use each one to move your army to a neighboring province you control, or to attack a neighboring enemy province. This ability is available right away, so you can attack a second time this turn, or move your army from the Era's Badlands before ending your turn.
So this ends up being an interesting thing with regard to, whether it's exterminating humanity on Earth or having a very large force with something like the Necrons, because like the further away you are, the longer it takes for you to get the full understanding of your overall body or your overall forces, which effectively leaves you with a number of kind of equally bad ideas in terms of making your forces stupid, or making your forces equally smart and having the bureaucracy problem, which effectively puts you in the problem of being corporate Skynet.
Yeah.
So you are welcome for the mental image of every like AI body that you're working with from now on, and every AI resource that you're working with from now on, functionally just having a suit on, because that's more or less what it boils down to.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. There's definitely a case with the Necrons. The general peasantry were turned into Necron warriors. The soldiery were turned into the Immortals. So, they've effectively weaponized their entire race, and if you're a step above that, that's where you start getting the cryptex and the what do I call them? I don't even see it. You start getting into like the lords and the Illuminors and all that sort of funny things, and just like. Just the general super mindscape of where they've actually got thought, and immediately start trying to backstab one another, because that's exactly what they do. At the very least, the general soldiery.
Corporate backstabbing, dynasty backstabbing. Weird how those things end up looking kind of similar.
Yeah. different name, different outfit, but the suit still looks like a suit.
Suit still looks like a suit. Just the hats are different. Instead of this like top hat with a fake silk feather, I got like that weird death mask that you put on the Necron board earlier on this episode.
Basically. Yeah. Oh, I should mention too. Actually, I forgot to mention this during the thing, but we did say that every single art faction in the game got a new unit, right? We didn't mention the one that Chaos got, because it's kind of weird, and also, while it did appear in the Stronghold mission, it did not appear as a unit to fight. And it's kind of funny, because it's just another example of just how sort of like that short end of the stick sort of thing Chaos got. You got the ability to upgrade your Chaos Lord into a Demon Prince. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, you get another really good, really strong unit who, unlike the Bloodthirster, doesn't lose health when out of combat. But on the other hand, in a game with pathfinding as troublesome as this game, having another like a super giant unit is a bit of a bummer. And for Chaos in the campaign especially, as Elephas the Inheritor, you play through and you get all the bits of armor, and that allows you to get the final unlock, which turns you into the Demon Prince. But unfortunately, none of all those other bonuses you've got move on to the Demon Prince, I believe. And so essentially, you get a unit that is worse than the than Elephas.
It's not even arguable. Point. You're just like objectively worse.
I mean, you're bigger and you're cooler, I guess, but you've lost literally all of your your bonuses that you had. Seems like an oversight to me, but
it's very much an oversight, because like in the skirmish, it's a big upgrade, though arguably it becomes like by the time you get there, you've either won or you haven't, and this particular upgrade doesn't matter anymore. There's that problem, but that gets caught up with all of the skirmish. The skirmish. Sunk cost and opportunity cost rigmarole that you inevitably get into, and that becomes a very weird conversation. But hey, it's Lucas Alexander.
Yeah, we're actually fun. Again, I mean, he attacked us before. But this time we're actually attacking him with our forces, and the reason why he's attacking us is because he's adjacent. He's in his Stronghold territory, so he's gonna have a go at us, and we're gonna get things set up so that we can beat the absolute snot out of him in the next video. Because after this particular battle, it's gonna be over. We've had a big talk, and I'll get it set up in time for probably, I think, everyone's favorite Stronghold fight.
It's definitely one of the most mimetic because Lucas Alexander has just an absolutely amazing speech beforehand.
Oh yeah, like everything about Victory Bay is pretty good. So we'll try not to tip our hands too early on that one.
Definitely, please look forward to the next episode, because Victory Bay is incredible. But before I get too distracted again, it is one of those things where in the skirmish, it's objectively a big upgrade, but in the campaign, you spend all of this time getting all of these war gear upgrades, which are not at all comparable in skirmish. You can't get those in skirmish, so it's just sort of like you just become this bland, unupgraded demon prince, and it's just like, okay, well, didn't really think that one through.
It is kind of funny, but yeah, I think that's probably the biggest problem I have with that particular option is it definitely activates far too late. Don't die! Don't die! Okay.
That would have been
like
annoying.
It just. Well, I mean, easily replaceable, but yeah, it's just, and it's definitely an overarching problem with because I don't think any of the other factions get their units nearly so late, like their additional thing nearly so late, at a point where it's kind of like the Necron monolith. If they're not monoliths on the field, you've pretty much won. If you've got the Demon Prince on the field as Chaos, you've almost definitely won, because you've probably fought and beaten the shit out of everyone to get there so hard that they can't even see straight.
I mean, at the absolute least, there is a very big difference with regard to the monolith, because if you get the monolith, everybody else, you can throw everybody else against one another in a climactic G.I. Joe setup, and it can be what feels like a come from behind victory. To even have the ability to get your demon prince, like that's just victory lap. like you are really just taking a victory lap at that point.
Lucas is not in the business of kicking the bucket over here. Well, that's fair enough.
I mean,
and
LucasAlexander.txt.
I'm just trying to think, because I'm pretty sure every other faction, like of the 5, get mid-game units. Like they get, like the Eldar get the Harlequin, which is a character, but even that still, I think, still feels like a secondary commander style character that appears like, you know, mid-game. So it's just like I don't know. It was an interesting choice to effectively replace one character with like a pre-existing model. But
it was one that you kind of get backed into simply from the premise of chaos, though. And I realize we're talking a little bit more about chaos than we are about Necrons right now. But also, I don't care.
That's right.
But,
we speed bumped chaos pretty hard. So
right, like if you didn't make the ultimate sort of upgrade, the Demon Prince, that in and of itself would have been really weird, because that is the goal of most Chaos followers, and it's definitely the overall goal of Eliphas. You know, as much as he continues to screw around and get setbacks, both because of himself and because of everybody around him. You know, he wants to be a Demon Prince. Like if he's gonna win, that's where he's going with
it. He'll never get there. He's
nah.
He's our own little 40k Starscream. He'll never get there.
Also, our own 40k Starscream because he is his own worst enemy.
That's like See, it's the thing that kind of gets me in that regard. It's like. He even says in that mission, "I will not go back to the Basilica of Torments." So it sounds like he's already been sent to the punishment house for fucking up once before.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's already been. You guys cool? I feel like
is going on with you guys. Flayed.
I'm not
there
sure.
You go.
But we were more effectively killing Imperial Guard via Commissar at that point than we were through combat. They were like trying to keep them a roll up from like the Flayed one trade by just executing their own dudes. Perfectly cromulent tactic. Don't worry about it.
Oh no, it absolutely is. Like I would have done something very similar, because when an Imperial Guard squad hits this situation, you might as well just pack it in. Like if you don't have the Commissar shoot somebody, like you're not getting anything more out of that squad. Trust me, I've tried. Like. Even in terms of like this is one of the strange things about the way that the guard squad works out is, even if you run them away, they take so long to reorganize that you might as well just shoot the squad and reinforce the soldier.
You will just running in.
What now?
I will lead the charge!
Yeah, he'll lead the charge straight into hell, buddy.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Next time, we're going to be beating up Lucas Alexander on his home turf. We're gonna be doing it at Victory Bay, because it's a good one. It's a fun one.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and it's really enjoyable. There's actually, I believe I look at the lore for the location I just took before we finish up as well, and it's kind of interesting. And I'm gonna sort of pop huge spoilers on. Oh no, we gotta defend ourselves first. Man, I'm doing this in the last minute.
It looks like you skipped it.
Oh yeah, I did. I skipped through it. Oh, thank God.
You, because it's
we saw how it went.
interesting.
Yeah, I must have made that decision. It has been a year since I edited this thing up. So. I mean,
think
I
you were
believe
correct.
I believe I've edited out a few defensive operations because I think we just got our third one. So
Yeah, that was definitely the third one. You definitely edited out one earlier, and I think
yeah,
you were correct to
I had
do
my
so.
head in a codex.
Yeah. You were definitely correct to do
dear.
so. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but once you've seen one defensive operation, you have definitely seen all of them. Like,
Yep.
I'm here to tell you.
I'm basically showing everyone new maps anyway. So this particular piece of lore is interesting because it's talking about how a plague has started to spread around the area, and that someone's like, "It's a blessing from a great unclean one," etc., etc. And the the Imperial Guard are kind of like confused by it and everything like that. And it's kind of funny actually because if you play the Chaos campaign and as Eliphas, you're going around, you're blowing up all the enemies, and you're dedicating a lot of what you're doing to different gods and also different factions. And when you defeat the Imperial Guard as Eliphas, they point out that one of the big things that you might have even seen on the map was like this big sort of laser beamy thing occasionally coming. One of the things that they found when they landed was the big cannon off of a Titan, and so the Imperial, that was one of the reasons why the Imperial Guard went from being an Ulthway pursuit force. The Imperial Guard came to Cronus pursuing Taldir for what she did on Lorne 5. They don't go into too deep about whether that means her ending was the canon one or not, but they were chasing her down. They landed at Victory Bay, and they found that cannon and were told, okay, you guys have to conquer this thing now. You guys are the first Cronus regiment. Lucas Alexander was named the planetary governor militant, which basically meant he was both the guy in charge of the planet as well as the guy in charge of the planet's army. Until such a time it was basically subdued. But the thing about that particular cannon is it houses a great unclean one. So the reason why the plague is spreading around is because it's a demon-infested weapon from a demon-infested Titan, and Eliphas makes a dedication towards it. So that's like a subtle sort of hint to that sort of piece of information as well. The Imperial forces have no idea that this is a thing that's happening, and so they don't understand why people have suddenly started getting sick. But considering that the boundaries of reality have been weakened somewhat with the arrival of Eliphas and friends at that point, and the Deimos Peninsula itself has been inundated with warp energy as a result of the portal opening, there would still be bleed enough across the rest of the land, so that that our friend the Corn Demon trapped in the in that desert area was able to sort of influence combat as well, and grant boons to people fighting around him in an attempt to sort of will himself to break out. I'm sort of babbling on for a bit, but you can kind of see the reach of chaos is far and subtle, and we're going to have to go there and destroy that thing because we're the Necrons and we don't take that shit on our planet. You're on our house, you're mucking up everything, you're spilling like chaos Cheeto Dorito dust everywhere, and we're just not going to have it. And so we're next time we're going to go in there and we're going to say to Lucas Alexander, look dude, Victory Bay is filthy, we're evicting you.
Get off our damn lawn!
So yeah, so that's next time, and it's gonna be a banger because it's one of my it's pretty much my favorite Stronghold. Oops, we're doing it like the second one. Oh well, that doesn't mean any of the other ones are bad. Don't worry about it. But it is the best one. Like, so until then,
It's
I've been the last
everybody's favorite one. I'm sorry, it just is.
And that's cool, guy. And we will see you all next time.
Lights.